So let's start working on the big ones first. Well, but then I thought there's something that's not on there, and that's money. So a lot of seniors in here, you've got IRAs, you've got investments. You know, I hope you do, because if you're living off Social Security, you're in tough shape. I do. And so it's important to follow the money. Here's an article by Bill McKibben in the New Yorker magazine talking about disinvestment. He's led a really successful campaign to get colleges and universities to eliminate fossil fuels from their endowments, their endowment investments. And so you can do that too. So follow the money, disinvestment. Those references are on the sheet. You can go there and they will show you what investment funds are fossil fuel free funds and sustainable investments. There's a lot of them. You know, so you have money, say, and most people have a mutual fund, and I'm spacing out the name of one. Franklin, or what's another popular one? Help me out here.
Vanguard.
Fidelity?
Fidelity. So Vanguard and Fidelity, they have a whole bunch of things, a portfolio of investments you can do. So let's suppose you own some Fidelity fund. And so in that fund, you buy shares in the fund, but that fund has investments in healthcare, technology, energy, a whole group of classifications. That's why they're good investments, because they're diversified. So you can't just ask Fidelity, look, I don't want the fossil fuels. They say, well, you're going to take the whole thing, you're going to leave it. So you got to find a fund that doesn't include fossil fuel investments. So that can be done, and there's the references for that. So you want to avoid the investments in fossil fuels. Now, to do this, you need to consult with your investment advisor or broker, because if you just go dump, you know, $2 million worth of Fidelity, I mean, you might as well think big. You're probably, especially these days, you're going to generate a huge tax problem. And there's ways to make that adjustment to minimize that. So you probably need some professional advice to do this. Fossil fuel stocks are not a good investment. Fossil fuel investment values are based upon their proven reserves. And so if all of a sudden we leave fossil fuels in the ground, a large part of the value of these companies, it just disappears, and the stocks are going to crash. Investment people know this now. I don't know if you do, but you should not be in coal. You shouldn't be in oil, you shouldn't be in gas. Where you should be is in renewable energy sources. And as an example of that, two of the big boys, Goldman Sachs and BlackRock, have recently sworn off fossil fuel investments.
Wow.
That's a positive, you know. So in general, in the investment business, I think you do better personally when you do what the big boys do. Get out of those fossil fuel stocks before you eat it. So you can invest in mitigation and renewable energy. And so I put trees up here because Steve Cook has got a hot idea on how to invest in trees. And so afterwards, if you're interested in investing in something that it will really mitigate climate change, let's have Steve go in the back corner and you can talk to him. And he has some handouts and stuff. And it's a really interesting idea he has. Well, here's the worst one of all. J.P. Morgan Chase, $200 billion. They're the biggest funder of fossil fuels in the world, the biggest funder of fossil fuel expansion, the biggest tar sands funder in the world, the biggest funder of Arctic oil and gas in the world, the biggest funder of coal mining in the world, the biggest funder of liquefied natural gas in the world, the biggest funder of ultra-deep drilling in the world, the second biggest funder of fracking in the world, and the third biggest funder of coal power in the world. Is this a company you want to deal with?
No.
That's my point. Switch banks. Go to some local bank. get your money out of Chase. You're tainted by dealing with them. Cut up your Chase credit card. So, I've had a Chase credit card since 1990. You know, I used to run my business off of it, and it's gone. Find a bank that doesn't invest so heavily in fossil fuels. I'm going to try to use Capital One for a while. They have about $4 billion in capital in fossil fuel investments, as opposed to 200, so that's an improvement. But Tom Steyer, you know the name?
Yes.
So he started something called Beneficial State Bank, and that's in California now. And they have a very green business model, and they will soon be issuing credit cards, and so that may be the place to go. So if you go to that bank, just Google for it, you can sign up to be notified when their cards are ready. It should be in a few months.
What's the name of it again?
Beneficial Bank. Yeah.
Beneficial what?
Bank.
Bank.
State.
So, this was a chart that was done just to hammer this point home on you if you don't have the message already. This is a chart done by the Rainforest Action Network. And so here's JP Morgan Chase with the maximum investment. Right behind it, Wells Fargo, Citi, Bank of America. So those are probably all ones you could stay away from. I just fingered Chase because they're so egregious. These others are mainly foreign banks, Banks of China, Deutsche Bank, etc. So Rainforest Action Network has a whole huge report on this kind of stuff. So these are important ways of letting these people know. If you bail out on them, you got to tell them. Tell them why.